Instagram. It took me a little bit to get connected here today. So if you're waiting, thank you so much for your patience. I really do truly appreciate it. I'm really happy to talk to all of you about this situation that I feel like is actually impacting a lot of people right now. I'm seeing a lot of business owners talking about the fact that their bookings are low, their inquiries are low, they're not seeing as much traction as they're used to. And so it's really causing them to have a significant amount of doubt around what they're bringing to the table, around whether or not their business will be able to move forward in a healthy way. I think this is also tough because it's coming on the heels of such a busy past 2 years. And so some of us, like me, have left our 9 to 5 over the past year, and we have thought like, okay, like all the evidence is pointing to like all signs are go. It is safe for me to leave a 9 to 5. It is safe for me to leave another income channel on the table. Um, and now with inquiries maybe being a little bit lower, bookings maybe being a little bit lower than what we had anticipated, maybe different than what we saw historically over these past 2 years, it's really making us begin to question ourselves. And when we question ourselves, we don't show up in our business and in life in general in the way that we want to. And everything, this is actually something I was talking to my own coach about recently, like everything that's happening in the personal will affect the professional. So I think it's good to talk about these things. And I think that it's good to talk about these things not only as just like things we can do to make it better, but also how can we adjust the way that we think so that the things that we're going through don't mean more to us in our business than they need to, right? So, um, with that being said, I wanted to share a few things about what this could be, what like the behind the scenes of this could be. Um, and also, I just want to share with you all, I think this really does call into the idea that you're doing something wrong, right? Like the question of like, what am I doing wrong? I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. Things are not going the way that I anticipated in my business. Like, what am I doing wrong? And how do I identify this? And I just want to remind everybody that we're empowered, right? Like we don't just have to be at the mercy of whatever is happening in our lives, in our business. Like we can actually choose action steps and choose ways of thinking about things to empower ourselves as opposed to just feeling like, oh, we're at the mercy of some particular thing. We don't want to let business just happen to us. And when things like this happen, right, it can feel like business is just happening to us, but there are things that we can do and ways we can think that will enable us to get outside of this feeling that business is just happening to us, right? So I wrote down a few notes here. If you see me looking down, I wrote down a few notes because I didn't want to forget what I wanted to say to you because I have actually been thinking about this for quite a while. Because, like I said before, I've been seeing so many people, I've been hearing so many people tell me and just post, in online groups that they're not getting the traction that they really anticipated. And so I've been thinking about this for a while. And so I wrote down like all of my thoughts. And so I didn't want to lose track of them. I have quite a few thoughts. So I think number one, it's important to kind of put scope around why this could be happening in general, because the biggest thing that I want to point to here is that you're not doing anything wrong, especially if you're seeing evidence in the industry as a whole that other people are going through what you're going through, right? So it's not that you suck. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's that things may need to be done differently because the market is changing, the industry is changing, right? But that doesn't mean that anything is being done wrong. And so the first thing I want us to know is that I think that it's important to have the why around this so we can understand what we can do to potentially fix it moving forward. So number one, the first thing that I think is really important to take hold of is the fact that we've been hearing recession language over the past almost a year now. So for the past like 12 months, analysts, historians, people who are out in the world doing these things, analyzing these trends, reviewing what history has told us, have said, oh, a recession is on the way. A recession is coming. Everybody needs to be prepared for the recession, right? And so, although wedding photography is a luxury, A lot of people do see it as a necessity, right, for their wedding day. Usually when people book a wedding, they're booking their venue and then they're booking their photographer. So they do see it as a necessary expense. However, recession language, even for people who are investing in luxuries like a wedding, recession language impacts everybody's psyche that hears it, right? Whether or not those people actually have the money, quote unquote, to be spending money on a wedding, that still doesn't mean that the recession language is not going to impact their psyche. So, regardless of actual financial means, they're still going to have in their head, oh, we are in a recession. Oh, there is inflation, right? That's still going to be something that's top of everybody's mind. And because of that, the value perception of a dollar has changed. The value perception of money has changed. And because of that, people now expect more from their financial investments. So they may be looking for more from you, not necessarily by way of delivery, but by way of how you're actually moving them into your world. So, what are you sharing in your posts on social media? What are you sharing in your videos on TikTok? What are you sharing on your website, right? They're going to be needing more to be able to make a good decision to work with you, because they're going to put so much value on money that they're going to be expecting more from what they invest in, no matter what the thing is. That's going to be for anything in particular. That's going to be not only for things that they purchase, like actual things, tangible things, but also and especially from services, right? They're going to be expecting more. They want to know why they're investing. They want to know what they're getting. They want to know who they're working with. So they're going to be expecting more for the marketing that you're doing, especially to be able to bring them into your world. And then because the perception of money has changed, right? And because they are expecting more from their investments, they're likely doing more research than they have over these past 2 years. They're likely taking more time to make decisions. And they may even be planning their weddings for farther out than they have recently because they realize they need to save more and they don't want to put themselves into debt to be able to have the wedding that they want. I think this is a little bit of a values transition, a little bit of a mindset transition between what we saw these past 2 years. So these past 2 years, there was so much of like a boom for weddings that we got very comfortable with not necessarily needing to do too much to still welcome people into our world. And we don't have to change who we are, right? Or how we serve, but we just need to be able to articulate it better, maybe more in depth, maybe share a little bit more, maybe get a little more visible, right? Like these are things that we need to be considering because in order for people to make good decisions, they need to know who they're investing with. And this is just what's happening in the world right now. So they need to be able to make good decisions, empowered decisions. In order to make empowered decisions, they need to have the information that they need from you in order to make these decisions. And at this point in time, right, as they're considering these things and they're needing more to be comfortable investing, they're also going to you're also going to understand, or you're going to start to see that we're now getting back into the trend of what pre-pandemic booking cycles looked like. So this would be a good time of year to be looking over what your booking trends were, your inquiry trends were back in 2019 at this time of year. So I wouldn't be surprised if we now start to flow back into that type of booking trend, right? Because there's not so much of a boom. There's not so much of that sense of urgency. It's not necessary anymore, right? Like after the pandemic, people knew that if they wanted to get married in 2021, they were fighting essentially with other couples who had moved their weddings from 2020 into 2021. That was also somewhat the case for 2022, where couples who wanted to get married in 2022 knew that they would potentially be going up against other couples who had moved their wedding because of the pandemic in 2020 or 2021, or the couples that had had the foresight to just kind of plan for 2022 from the get-go because they just wanted the pandemic to be not even a thing that they needed to worry about. But now we're in 2023 and we're moving into 2024, right? We're getting bookings for 2024 as well. And that is something that we don't have the luxury, essentially, of having a boom to fall back on at this point in time. So I wouldn't be surprised if you were to go back in your booking trends and your inquiry trends, that you would see that your trends now are starting to even out and back to kind of like where they were before, or maybe even a little bit lower, because with the recession and with the recession language and with inflation and inflation language, people are going to want to plan further out. So you may start getting more and more 2024 inquiries soon. They're going to want to plan further out because the value of a dollar has changed, right? So as we know all these things, right, that recession language and inflation language impacts everybody's psyche, no matter what their actual financial means are, with knowing that the value perception of a dollar has changed, with knowing that the fact that that has changed, the perception of money has changed, people need to know more in order to make a good investment decision, and may even potentially need to know more to make a decision, even to inquire, right? And with also knowing that the pandemic is not as much of a player as it used to be in the wedding world, right? So we have all these things that we're contending with within our wedding photography businesses, within our small businesses. And so I think there are some questions that we need to ask ourselves to really put perspective around what we need to do moving forward. And the reason why I've shared this as questions is because everybody's business is different, right? So everybody's business is at different points in its lifespan, right? Different locations, different clientele, different packages available, right? And so these questions are questions you need to ask yourself, and not be out there all up in the internet world, but really taking the time to be honest about what you need to do for your business in particular. I have seen a lot of advice given or a lot of advice being asked of in online groups, and that is okay, right? Like, we have communities for a reason. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think whenever we ask for advice or whenever we take advice from online groups, we have to recognize the source and also recognize where we're pouring that advice into, right? So if you're getting advice from somebody who, maybe is only in their first couple of years of business and they're based in the Midwest, what is working for them may not actually work for you if you're somebody who's been in business for maybe 7-8 years and you're in the Northeast, right? Like, the markets are different and the business life cycle is different, right? So I think it's important to know that just because something may work for one person, that doesn't mean it will work for you. And just because it works for you doesn't mean it will work for the next person. And it's up to everybody to analyze what's actually best for them in their business, right? And that's no shade to anybody. That's literally just understanding why it's so important to stay in our own lane and to have access into what we need in our business and insight into what we need in our business, so that our business can flourish alongside other businesses, and other businesses can decide what they want to do. That is totally fine. We don't need to pass any judgment or have any feelings about that. We just need to ask ourselves the question of, what do I need to do for my business in particular because of these things going on, right? So here are the questions that I really want to present. If you are somebody who feels like your bookings are down, if you feel like your inquiries are down, if you feel like you're seeing everybody else succeeding and not you, if you're feeling like you're seeing everybody post on their Instagram stories that they've booked another date and you haven't, like, these are the questions that I think are really important to ask ourselves. And they're laser focused questions. They're not like fluffy, whatever. They're questions that you need to ask yourself. And I would recommend, if you're listening to this now, that you get like a pen and paper, right? Or you listen to this podcast episode over again when it goes out on the podcast, right? So there's actually 4 questions if you have a pen and paper, or maybe you're writing it on your phone, or maybe you'll rewind. So the first one is, this is going to be hard, but it's to ask yourself, have you become too comfortable in your business in just allowing it to happen to you with minimal effort towards visibility, especially? And the reason I say that is because these past 2 years have really been almost like a cushion for us, where we had the ability to just let business happen to us. We had the ability to throw up a few Instagram posts and trust that we would get a few inquiries a week, and we would book at least a few of them a month, right? So it really created a nice little soft landing place for us, where anybody could put out minimal effort and still have a fairly successful business. That's changed. That has changed at this point in time. And it's normal for industries, for societies, for cultures, to go through these types of changes, right? So, we'll come out of this at some point and then it will come back again. So, these are things to remember as you grow and as you continue on in this industry. So, have you become too comfortable in your business in just allowing it to happen to you with minimal effort towards visibility over these past few years? This will need to change. If you're not somebody who is showing up on your Instagram stories almost every single day, if you have thrown away TikTok, if you have really making it not a priority to create a bio on your website that really speaks into who you are and how you serve, this is going to impact you negatively, right? And so now is the time to start becoming comfortable with being more visible, right? By way of showing up on Instagram stories, by way of, potentially offering TikToks, by way of being more intentional about the way that you show up on your website, right? The pictures that you share, the copy that you craft, the bio that you offer there on your website. You have to be visible because, again, going back to what I shared before, the value of a dollar has changed for people. And because the value of a dollar has changed for people, they need to know more before they make a decision, even to reach out, right? So that's the first question. The second question is one of those questions that we think about and we're like, logically, we know the answer to this, but feeling wise, we don't want to accept it. But the question is, are your bookings actually down? Are they actually down? Right? Or are they on trend for what they have been in the past this particular time of year? And the reason I say this is that because usually between the months of December through sometimes even March, like the really cold, bleak, dark winter months, bookings are usually down for people. People will say that people are like educators will say, anybody, and not only in the photography industry, any educator will say bookings should be up. You should be getting more sales in December, right? And maybe even in January as well, right? Because of the engagement season, because people are ready to spend money, because people like to spend money around this time of year, because they're ready to spend money this time of year. But that's not going to be true for every single business in every single industry. I'll tell you right now, I had 0 sales in December and I was okay with that, right? Because I knew that that is normal for my client life cycle. It is very unusual that I have somebody book in December, and that is okay with me. But the only reason that I felt comfortable with it is because I actually knew. And so in these bleak, winter months, especially in the Northeast and the tri-state area, nobody wants to be doing anything. Everybody's trying to save their money, and they're especially going to be trying to save money this winter with the recession language, with the inflation language, especially if they have big events coming up, right? Not only just weddings, but vacations, right? They have big birthdays coming up. So they're not necessarily always going to be wanting to spend money in the winter months, right? So I think that's something to know too. And this is also because this happens during this time of year. This is the time of year every single year, no matter what, literally no matter what. Whether or not there's a recession, whether or not there's inflation, everybody gets itchy. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, my business is failing. It's going to fall apart. I'm going to have to shut it down. Because this time of year, not only are clients not really ready to make investments a lot of the time for various different businesses, but we also feel bleak. Winter is not fun for the majority of us creatives. We don't love it. We're cold. It's dark outside. We're uncomfortable, right? And we're bored, right? So everybody will be like, okay, this winter's a great time of year to be working on back-end processes. And I agree with that. But does that mean we want to do it? Probably not. And it's not exciting. It doesn't feel exciting. And because all these things are working in tandem here in the winter, we start to feel like, oh my God, nobody's booking us. Something's wrong with us. I would guarantee that if you looked back in different Facebook groups that you're a part of for creatives, these same type of posts were floating around last January as well. I would guarantee the posts that are like, are your bookings down? Because it's like this literally every single winter. So the question is, are your bookings actually down? Or is this the normal trend for your client and client life cycle? That is something that is important to know. The third question I have is, this is a tough one. And I think that this one is actually really difficult to analyze. So I'll give you that caveat, right? Because it's hard to sometimes to think outside of like where we're at in particular in our business and what we're thinking through. But the question is, do you need to add or adjust something in your offerings to meet your clients where they're at? And a lot of the time when people think about adding or adjusting things in what they offer as a wedding photographer, they will start to offer more in their wedding photography packages and price them as less, right? Or they'll add something like a shop, right? Or they'll add something like mini sessions. So they do their best to diversify, but is that actually what your clients need? And that's the biggest thing, is that it's important for us to know where our clients are at and how they're valuing their investments and how they're valuing their money at any particular given point in time, to understand what we need to adjust in our business in order to serve them best, right? So what do you need to add or adjust in your offerings to meet your clients where they're at? This could look for some people that you add a micro wedding package into your offerings. Maybe you didn't offer that before, but maybe you offer like a 4 hour, 3 to 4 hour, like $2,000 type of micro wedding package, right? Maybe this looks like offering something like taking second shooters out of particular packages, right? Because then you save money and then you can translate that savings over to your clients. So it's really up to you what you need to add or adjust, but that's going to be different for every single business. But you need to know where your clients are at in order to know what they need in order to adjust what you need to offer in your business. And then the last thing I want to ask is, it's comparable, but it's different. Do you need to diversify, update, and add to your business practices and investments in general? I do not mean buy a new camera. I will tell you right now, ain't nobody needs a new camera. We all have cameras that work. There is rarely a photographer that I meet who actually needs a new camera, even though they may think they do. So I'll tell you that right now. This has nothing to do with gear. It has nothing to do with camera stuff. It has nothing to do with buying a new flash or anything of that nature. But it's, what do you actually need to diversify, update, and add to your business practices and investments in general? So this kind of can be all encompassing for what we've talked about earlier in this live, but maybe you need to add more options for visibility in your business, right? Like that's adding to your business practices. Maybe you need to diversify the way that you market, right? So you're maybe primarily on Instagram, but maybe you need to add TikTok into your portfolio if you have the capacity for it, right? Maybe you need to have a better understanding of what marketing versus advertising actually is for your business, right? And the way that you figure that out is by investing in like different education, right? And maybe you need to add yourself to networking opportunities. Maybe you need to get different types of coaching. Maybe you need to invest in SEO, whether that's financially or energetically, right? It's time. I know for me, in order to meet my clients where they were at it with this like year, and in order to diversify what I offer, I added a team. I added a team of photographers. That's not going to be for everybody, and that's actually, it's a tough way for most photographers to go, especially if they haven't prepared for it. I don't not recommend it. I actually love it, but I think it's a very particular thing that is not meant for every single person, and I don't think that's wrong. But what do you need to add to, update, diversify within your business practices in order to meet your clients where they're at and your investments in general, right? So these are like the main questions I would recommend writing down to really spin on, to really take some time to brainstorm around, to maybe journal a little bit about, to maybe bounce like ideas off of a friend with. So I'll give them to you again, and I'll just make them more condensed for you so you can grab them. The first is, have you become too comfortable in your business, and are you too comfortable with just allowing business to happen to you? That is number one. Number two, are your bookings actually down, or is this consistent with your client life cycle? Is it normal that their booking trends are lower? in the winter. I know mine are. That's okay. Right. And that there's no shame in that either. So I want to know you that I want you to know that there's no shame in honoring what is normal for you, your business, and your clients. Some people will act like if you're not getting 10 million inquiries a day that you suck. That's not true. It's not true. You need to know what you need to book in order to maintain. And that may not mean that you need to get 10 million inquiries a month or 10 million bookings a month. Okay. The third thing is, do you need to add or adjust something in your offerings to meet your clients where they're at? What do they need from you right now? And then the fourth is, do you need to diversify, update, add to any of your business practices or your business investments in general? What do you need to upgrade? What do you need to enhance? What do you need to refine? Right. I also want to remind you here, you're empowered to run a successful business even in a recession. So, as much as I said before that recession and inflation language is going to impact our client psyche, it can also impact ours. And we need to be careful about what we allow our mind to focus on. There are things that we need to work on in situations like this. There are things that we need to pay attention to. But if our whole life, if our whole mindset is just consumed with the fact that there is a recession and that there is inflation, we will just be at a standstill because we're so busy thinking about it that we're not doing anything about it. So you can run a successful business even in a recession. You are empowered to do that. That is an option. And I want to let you know that. And your business doesn't need to just happen to you. You can name what you want, you can set the goal, and you can continue to work towards it, even with inflation, even with a recession. So, those are all my thoughts today. I would love to hear any of your top takeaways in my DMs. I would love to chat more about this. I think that this doesn't need to be as scary as it may seem, but I also want to honor for you also that we all have these feelings, right? So nobody's immune from these feelings. Nobody ever like runs their business in a silo. Nobody's ever doing like worse than the next person next to them, right? Like everybody has their things that hangs them up in business, and this can be one, and there can be others as well. But that's everything I have for you today. Send me a DM if you want to chat more. I'm truly happy to talk about this. I love this. I don't talk about this a lot, but I have an MBA, so I love to talk about business trends, cultural stuff. So like culture trends, society trends. Let me know. So thanks so much for being here, and I hope you all have a great Friday and a great and warm weekend ahead of you.